Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. I'm back with another segment. And of course, this segment, as you can tell from the clip, is talking about the Cam Newton 4th and 1 interview with Jason Whitlock. And it was a very good interview, one of those interviews that I could watch all the way through and probably could watch again because Cam did a great job of not just asking tough questions, but the questions we always thought about when it comes to Jason Whitlock and the irony or the interesting nature that Jason Whitlock has. Because Cam did a great job, I think, of not breaking character as well, because he even sent shots at Cam in that interview. But Cam was very respectful, let him finish his sentences. I mean, Jason Whitlock did the same, but I think they asked the tough questions that everybody wanted to know and hear. And it pretty much didn't change the perception of Jason Whitlock for me. I think it changed the perception of Cam Newton for me because the way he was breaking down his style and the way he talks and the way the people back home look and talk and how he influences those people. Because a lot of times when you look at Cam Newton, especially as a quarterback with dreadlocks, they see him as somebody out of the norm because Jason Whitlock talked about the button up quarterback and how you need to be clean cut, no tattoos, no piercings. You need to say all the right things. But we know that's not reality, and all that is gold is not reality. So Cam broke it down to his perspective, being from Atlanta, Georgia, being from the neighborhood that he was from, and who he looked up to as a kid, and what drove him to motivate the people because a lot of things in this interview, Jason Whitlock was just basically saying, "Hey, you're supposed to be this way," but Cam is saying, "Hey, I can make my own way. I had enough leverage back then. I had enough clout. I had enough style. I had enough grace to influence the youth behind him." Being a button-up quarterback, for example, he'd bring up John Elway. Most people, especially in urban communities, didn't think we could be John Elway, not just because we weren't white, but just because that wasn't gonna be the image because you coming from these places where even if you were buttoned up, they have a certain perception of you. So I think Cam did a great job of conveying that message, even though I don't think that Jason Whitlock will attain or take any of these thoughts or ideologies that Cam had into his perception or into his ideology going forward. So I don't think that Cam changed much, but he changed a lot for me as far as being able to see it from his point of view because I was like most people that said, "Man, Cam does probably too much just because of the way he talks and the way he carries himself, the way he dresses and things like that." But he made a lot of sense. But uh Jason Whitlock didn't change anything for me. I think he's the same person, it's very clickbaity, rage baity, race baity, and just, pretty much misogynistic views a lot of times as well. So what he said about Joy Taylor, which caught a lot of wind and a lot of people made jokes about it, but when you peel back the layers of everything and how he talked about Joy Taylor and how he talked about Serena Williams, how he talked about all of these famous women, Naomi Osaka and people like that, it's very very misogynistic, the views that he had, and it was uncalled for, especially. So a lot of things that he says, I take it with a grain of salt because I think he's just trying to get back in the media, trying to get back into a space where he used to be that he was exiled from, a place that he was no longer welcomed at because he tried to be a part of a culture that he wasn't accepted in. And he also was not accepted by a culture of people that he was supposed to be a part of, the black community, which he became the OJ Simpson of sportscasters or the OJ Simpson of analyzm, uh, the OJ Simpsons of the sports world as far as commentary goes, because he tried to be accepted by a whole nother race, but they wouldn't even accept him. And then you neglected your own race. So now you're a man without a country. So that is what Jason Whitlock became, a man without a country. And that's one of the most dangerous places you can be in the world. So just to address some of the points that he had that was pretty much Bush League and null and void to modern ideology is he talked about how today there's a lot of feminism in the men in today's society, which if anybody knows about life, it's about balance. It's not, you don't have to be tough all the time. You don't have to be the most aggressive. a lot of that stuff is just toxic masculinity in itself in the first place. So no one has ever confused Jason Whitlock with being the most masculine man or the most toughest man. So I don't know where he comes with these ideas, but I think that's part of the rage baiting thing. But he addressed that when he talked to Cam Newton and said, "You too focused on how you look and how you dress and how you talk." But when he mentioned Cam Newton, he said that he talked about his father and how he tried to, which I think was out of pocket for the interview, bringing up Cam's past with the NCAA and the alleged payments to his fathers and things like that. He should never bring that up. But you mentioned his father, you never mentioned his mom one time or anything like that. So it was very hypocritical that you brung that up. Just because he likes to dress, that doesn't make that a feminine feature or a feminine trait. What that is toxic masculinity on the part of Jason Whitlock, which is very apropos, being hypocritical and speaking on both sides of your neck or both sides of your mouth. Um, Especially when Jason Whitlock's career is predicated on gossip and rumors and just trying to downgrade people, which some people can see that as a feminine trait. But of course, Jason Whitlock doesn't take accountability for his actions or lack thereof. So that was one of the big things I took from that. But another thing is that they asked him about attacking black people opposed to other races. And Jason Whitlock said, "Well, I attacked this guy, and you should have seen the way I attacked him the same way I attacked Stephen A. Smith, but you named one person. We know the track record that you have of talking about your own race of black people, whether it be Deion Sanders, which he always talks bad about Deion Sanders, Serena Williams, LeBron James, Cam Newton, amongst other black athletes that he has a negative perception of or doesn't speak highly of. And it's rare that he does speak highly of any black celebrities or actors or anything like that. He did speak well about Michael Jordan, the basketball player, because he said he was buttoned up and he pretty much played his role and he did everything the right way because he didn't do anything out of the ordinary. But Michael B. Jordan, he talked about him having a DEI Oscar and all these things that were uncalled for. And he probably never even watched the movie Sinners, which is an unfair criticism if you never watched the movie, especially opposed to the competition. He probably watched the competition and didn't watch the actual winner. So it's very unfair to say that somebody didn't deserve an Oscar if you didn't even watch the movie. But and another thing, I think the last one that I'll make is just his one-sided beef with Stephen A. Smith because Stephen A. Smith we know is high on the food chain as far as sports media goes, and he's one of the highest paid guys, and everybody wants the throne when you have it. So he always sends these subtle shots at Stephen, well, not subtle, but direct shots at Stephen A. Smith, especially attacking his college basketball career when Stephen A. is almost 60 years old. That's kind of a weird gripe to have about somebody about their college career. And you talked about his journalism career, which okay, what does that have to do with you? It just seems like hate, and it is hate because he is not where Stephen A is, and he will never get back up to that. Because at one point, I think he was on a trajectory to get there, but I think he kissed so many butts of the wrong people and turned the wrong people off that eventually they were done with him, and he lost his own show, several shows that he were a part of, and nobody has a good word to say about him except for maybe Marsalis Wiley and a couple of other people. But for the most part, nobody has a good word to say about Jason Whitlock because he doesn't speak glowingly about anyone. So it's just about self hatred and a lot of misogynistic points that he has. And I think he's just grasping at straws now to get back in the good graces of the people who make these decisions. So I don't think it'll work, but this interview was a great interview from Cam Newton, and it was very nasty that he kind of made Jason Whitlock made a face when it comes to Stuart Scott because people talk about Stephen A. Smith can never be Stuart Scott, but we know Jason Whitlock can never be that because he's of the culture and he was impactful and he always talked glowingly about people and he had a great way of talking about things. He kept it between the sports lines. Whitlock takes it outside of the sports world and makes it personal about everything. So rest in peace to Stuart Scott. And we always value Stuart Scott. He was an influence to all of us watching sports coming up, especially when ESPN was that prime network and the primary source for where we got our news. So I thought this interview was a great interview just to address all of those things with Jason Whitlock. But kudos to Cam Newton for his interview. And tell me what your thoughts about this interview. And until next time, I'll see you next time.